Greetings, everyone, and welcome. I'm Melissa Noble, director of the Cynthia Woods Mitchell Center for the Arts. And just an announcement, if you're in the iArt class, and if you haven't yet signed in, please do that because that gives you your credit for attending this event. So the Mitchell Center is a significant resource at the University of Houston and supports programs and collaborations across the performing, visual, and literary arts. Our primary mission is to bring visiting artists to the University of Houston campus, and we also support scholarships for graduate students in our units, the School of Art, Moore School of Music, School of Theater and Dance, each day you're writing, faculty research through innovation grants, and visiting faculty through our Scholarly Residence program. The collaboration with the Blaffer Art Museum on this artist talk tonight and Soledad's exhibition is a prime example of how the Mitchell Center supports our units. So other supporting that we are doing this year for our other units are the School of Art Cynthia Woods Mitchell Lecture Series and the newly established Cynthia Woods Mitchell Doing Artist Series at the Moore School of Music. And I would like to thank the staffs, the Mitchell Center and the Blaffer Art Museum who make these programs possible with all of their diligent work behind the scenes with the logistics and all. And now I'd like to introduce Laura Augusta, Chief Curator and Director of the Blaffer Art Museum, curator of the exhibition Camouflage, with the commissioning by Steven Matijcio. Thank you.
Hey everyone, hola, bienvenidos. How are we doing? Okay, great. My name is Laura. I saw some of you a few weeks ago. We've been on by a CEO. Welcome back. I'm happy to see you again. My name, I already said my name. I'm the director of the Blaffer Art Museum. And I am delighted to be here today to introduce Soledad Salamé, whose exhibition Camouflage, as Melissa said, opened on Friday evening at the Blaffer. This is a project that was commissioned by Steven Matijcio, who is former regional director of the Blaffer, and we received a lot of curatorial support as well from Amy Raehse of Goya Contemporary Altamar. I want to say a special thanks to Melissa Noble and to Sarah Jens of the Cynthia Woods Mitchell Center for the Arts, to Sue Payne, and other supporters and donors to the exhibition. And we're grateful for funding from the Andy Warhol Foundation for the Visual Arts. And we're grateful to all of you for being here today. I want to mention that we're keeping the museum open late for you tonight. So if you want to drop by for 10 minutes to see the show, we're standing by to show you the work and walking through. We'd love to see you over there. It's just right across the courtyard. So please feel free to drop by. That is just for you. Soledad Salamé was trained in the graphic arts in Caracas in printmaking, but has lived in the United States since 1983. Over 4 decades, she has developed a singular way of working. Sol is an artist who privileges research, which is why it is such a pleasure to have her here in the heart of our research university and community of students, engaging with scholars, and with our staff and students and community members on the most important issues of our time. In her studio, she begins with a problem, a news story, an unbelievable fact. For this exhibition, that fact was the ongoing dumping of more than 70,000 tons of clothing waste in the Atacama Desert of Chile. Each year, the U.S. exports more than 700,000 tons of discarded clothing, much of it fast fashion made of synthetic fabrics that cannot break down easily and cannot be burnt. Sol had already been to Atacama. She went to visit the large satellite array. So when you go over to the museum, you'll see a lot of work that looks at those satellites. But when she returned most recently, she was there to photograph and take video footage of the mountains of discarded clothing, which now can be seen from outer space. The resulting body of work looks at the problem, but it also looks at how humans are infinitely resourceful in facing unprecedented circumstances. From visiting clothing recycling plants to constructing her own garments of paper, pineapple, and bioplastic that she cooked in her kitchen, Soledad refuses to be contained within just one medium or even one solution to a problem. Her ideas, like her material approaches, are complex and therefore infinitely rewarding, challenging, and rich. Soledad is a master printmaker, but she thinks of printmaking as a form of sketching out ideas, almost like drawing. And her projects have taken the form of dance, video, screen printing, multimedia installation, embroidery, garment making, plexiglass sculpture, stacks of newspapers. All of this to say she is an unstoppable force in experimentation. We're pleased to present this work over at the Blaffer, and even more pleased that you get to see a behind the scenes of her thought process and her long history of work. I think you'll find a lot of points of reference and resonance with the industries and the unique possibilities of our own city in some of these projects. We're pleased also as a museum to think about the historical significance of Soledad's practice. She was trained in the context of South American geometric abstraction in the 1970s in Venezuela. Soledad left Chile in 1973, an important year in history, the same year that General Augusto Pinochet led a military coup backed by the US and launched a repressive military dictatorship, which he led until 1990. Working in Chile in the 1970s and 80s, artists such as Lottie Rosenfeld, Cecilia Vicuña, Alfredo Jar, Juan Downey, among many, many others, led a sophisticated conceptual artist movement in which subtle interventions in everyday life challenged the fundamental precepts of dictatorship. When Soledad left, she moved to Caracas, Venezuela, where she studied graphic arts, as I said, particularly printmaking. And this context, too, is one that has to be considered when we talk about her and when you're looking at her work. Venezuela has had a dynamic, kinetic, and optical art movement since the 1950s, and artists including Alejandro Otero, Carlos Cruz Diez, Jesus Rafael Soto, and many others thought not only about geometry, color, light, and movement, but also about public space, about universities, about quotidian experience, about what it means to be an educated citizen in the world. Sometimes I think politics and abstraction are imagined as distinct ways of working, like separate ways of working, separate worlds. But I want you to consider that politics are also abstractions. And what I mean is, if we imagine a politic to be a shared decision about what we value and support in our culture, then you might understand it as a shared dedication to an ideal, something ineffable, a truth that we feel and work our way toward. Similarly, abstract art uses the formal qualities of the everyday, so line, color, shape, sound, texture, in order to allow a representation to be more than literal. There are satellites in the exhibition over there based on the Atacama Large Millimeter Array, the acronym is ALMA in the Atacama Desert. But abstracted, they become devices for listening or searching. Are you listening? Soledad asks us. And one thing I love about the Atacama Array is that acronym, ALMA, also means soul in Spanish. I hope that at the end of the talk today, you'll ask Soledad questions about her research process. How does an artist do research? About collaboration with different kinds of artists, about interdisciplinary practice and what it looks like on the ground. And I hope you, more than anything, enjoy her talk. Please join me in welcoming Soledad Salamé.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming today. Thank you, Laura. Thank you for all of you being here. And so I selected a few projects, not only the ones that are in the exhibition, but projects that I did in 1983. So you could see a little bit of the transition, although I have to say I jumped 10 years and 7 years with different projects that I don't have the time to explain here, but you can go to my website and you can see a lot of projects up to 2016 there. So I'm going to start with continuing continents. That was one of the series I did about the Bangier, where all the continents were together, and it was suggested in 1912 that all these continents were together, and with the million, and they drifted over millions of years. I did several images and prints, and this is there's a colograph and a silk screen, and the colograph was forced done in cardboard, and it has a certain amount of colors. I used to work even with 40 colors sometimes. That's the map of Venezuela, and I found it to be really beautiful. And so then I'm going to jump to here to the three eras. This work, I was questioning at that time, I was questioning myself about time, about the idea of time. What were we doing with a paintbrush in our hands when the man got to the moon? And I couldn't find myself to create any art for a while. I moved to Florence thinking I'm going to study museology and restoration, because time was something that I couldn't grasp how we fit as artists at that time with all the advances that NASA was doing. And so I did several sundials, and this is one of them that talks about the sundials and the industrial era and the digital era. Was just when digital clocks were coming out. So that's... Now we jump to 1994. This was a piece that I did with plants, and it was a little bit about remembering the beautiful Caracas, Venezuela, with plants in their architecture. And I really was quite taken by the integration of the landscape and the architecture, how they both went together. So this piece traveled to several museums, was part of the Latin American Women Artists 1915-1995. It traveled to Milwaukee Art Museum, Miami Art Museum, the Women Museum, Denver Museum, published in Latin American Art in the 20th Century by Edward Sullivan. Then we jump to 2001. I worked many years with an architect in Chile, with landscape architects too. I've always find important that if you don't know how to proceed with an idea, that you get help from other artists and work with them and collaborate. And so here I work with many people, and I cannot forget the day that this happened, this exhibition opened, because the day before was 9/11, and I felt shocked that I was taking all this time to do this work, but look what was happening in New York, and I was so shocked. But my gallerist at that time told me, so that this is exactly why we do art, because we communicate something different than any horrors that can be happening at that time. And so that really calmed me down quite a bit. What we tried to do here was to take the Palace of Bellas Artes to what it was in 1910 because people would walk inside and there were plants everywhere and sculptures, and it was the Palace of Raehse where people would go in an afternoon and enjoy themselves inside the museums. This is how it was seen in the evening. The plants that you see there are native from Chile, and they were in a greenhouse for at least 6 months in those mesh. And the floor was quartz. And it was interesting because it was donated, that quartz was donated, but the sound that it did when people walked through the labyrinth was beautiful. And also we had to work with the architect of the building, with who managed the building, and because we couldn't put so much weight in one place, we had to really every square foot had to be a certain amount of weight, because not the floor would cave in. So it was an interesting project. Let me see. So this was neoclassical Second Empire style, and the glass cupola was done in Belgium. These were my amber pieces where all the insects were trapped. I worked in many projects with amber, and I worked with an entomologist from the Smithsonian, Gary Hevel. And he really guided me how to dry the insect, where to get the insects, talked about the farms that were created all over the world so people wouldn't raise cattle, would raise insects, because part of it would go to scientists, 70% would go to the scientists, and then the rest for trade. But they're farm insects, and the rest would be put back in nature. I'm going to say it because there is a very nice story that he told me, that the water bug that we have in the backyard of our homes, the two legs in the front, they can take the same amount of chemical that could combat cancer than if you kill 100 cows. It was pretty impressive, all the stories there are around insects and how the medicine is being implemented through insects. Now we jump to where did you live? 3,000 miles of Maryland coast. Of course, I had no idea when Irene Hoffman commissioned this work that we had 3,000 miles of Maryland coast. But then if you think about the Chesapeake Bay, then you start thinking, oh, we do have 3,000 miles of Maryland coast. And so here, this was about how I use an interactive map from, it was a 16-foot map. I used an interactive map from Arizona University, that where you could put what would happen if the water rises 1 meter. And so it would tell me all the parts that would flood. And so I used some resin to show about the flooding, and every square is 12 miles. And so I used Google Earth at that time to take an image that it made sense to me and I liked it to put in the map. Also, the lights are the population, and the cones are Superfund sites. The red ones are Superfund sites, and the other ones are the yellowish ones are the companies that pollute the area, the 10 top polluters of the area. So when I did this research, I was impressed that I had a pamphlet like 15 inches high of documents of what they throw in the air, what is in the ground. And I said, I remember saying to my husband, we need to move from here because there was so much pollution around. And if you think about it, at that time, the statistics were that 1 every 5 women had developed breast cancer. And so I started being very careful. What would I eat? What foods I would buy? And I think all the large cities, I was talking to Sue this morning, that all the large cities have Superfund sites. And it would be interesting for some of you, if you want to find out where you live and where are the Superfund sites. Now we jump to 2011 to Gold's Distortion. This was an exhibition that was done at the Museum of the Americas in Washington, D.C., and it was called Corridor. That was the first time it was presented. Corridor because we have Washington and Baltimore. And so we had 2 curators. We had Irene Hoffman curating Washington, D.C. when she was the president director of the Contemporary Museum. And then we had Laura Roulet curating Baltimore. And so Michael and I drove to when there was the explosion of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, the largest accidental marine oil spill in the history. Images were sent from digital to analog through an oval house where the lines had a lot of noise. They were sent through a fax machine. So I had a TIFF image. I pass it through a fax machine, the TIFF image, but of course the fax machine cannot read all that information because TIFF has a lot of information. And so it reduced the image to basic, and the noise is what made the pixelation of the image, the noise in the lines. So the top is the marshes. The second is the flooding. The third line is the shrimp industry. And the fourth line is the oil companies, where for me it was a narrative where all of them were looking for a space in nature, even nature itself. There's some close-ups here. All close-ups. All close-up. I work with interference pigments and with foil, cutting the print with a foil underneath to show where the oil spill was. So I want to go back to this image. Did you see the image on the left? We worked with an architect to create the next project in AutoCAD, to create this project called Barcodes Merging Identity and Technology. And with that architect, we selected several barcodes that would go and that we could create this piece in a plexiglass, and which was really an interesting thought, because at that time I felt that I was a barcode. I mean, when you cross from one country to the next, you're just simply a barcode, and nobody knows what you bring to that country, who you are, and I was feeling that I was not from here, but I was not from Chile either. I was feeling like, where am I from? And although if you ask me today, I have to say, I don't feel that way. I feel that we are all passengers, and that we don't know what can happen with climate change or political reasons. So we're just passengers. So I don't feel that way anymore. Times have changed. Since I did this was in 2012. and today is 2025, and so much has changed in that time. So, this piece got selected for uh, Art Miami during Art Basel at the entrance, and it was curated by Amy Raehse. And I invited 6 artists to talk about barcodes and technology. And I'm going to see, well, here are more pieces. The beautiful part about these pieces is they glow because some of them are, are what do you call it when they glow inside? Huh? Iridescent. Yeah. So when the light hits from the side, they glow. The like is they wear a light box. What is great. You see? Fluorescent is the word. Don't remember it. They're fluorescent. So here I want, where's the video? Here I want to pass, I'm going to pass only one video from this whole group.
My name is Pablo Cano. I was born in Havana, Cuba. My family left the island in 1962. The photographs and mementos that we were able to bring have been very important to my identity. Early on, I decided to become an artist. I loved marionettes as a child, and I decided that I wanted to create my paintings as three-dimensional kinetic sculpture. I like to experiment with found objects, recycled materials that are technologically created, plastic, car parts. I began using cassettes and mixing tapes in a recording studio. Now all these things are done with computers. I thought that one of the 7 wonders of the modern world could be the methods of media, Googleina, Amazona, and Facebooka. These are for me such a phenomenon. Facebooka was created with 2 mirrors on the side of her face that looked like a book. They reflect her, and they reflect the puppeteer. So it's almost like looking at yourself in the mirror. And this kind of mirror reflection is essentially what we are looking for in Facebook, a kind of moment of fame where we become the person that's special. I'm an artist who needs an audience. The like button is wonderful because it gives you a boost of self-esteem and gratification that people like what you're doing or what you're saying. It's a great way to promote, and I don't feel so isolated. I'm Arma. I am Duchamp's urinal. I was created in 1917, and I'm made out of foam, not porcelain. I have to be very light for the puppeteer. I'm singing in the drain. I'm singing in the drain. What a glorious feeling. I'm happy again.
Recorded and produced by George Fishman for QR Art Guide.
So I had like several artists and that how do I put there? Oh no. I had several artists, and so they had their phone, and they would walk in the fair, and they would put the phone and get all the videos from different artists. And it was done in 2012 when we were just starting to use barcodes in our phones. Now I jump to 2013, more or less. I walked into the Corcoran Gallery when the Corcoran Gallery existed in Washington, D.C., and I found a book of Emmett Gowan, who's a photographer, and this book was called Changing the Earth. All the images in that book were aerial views of the Earth. And changing the Earth, why? Because what mankind has done to the surface of the Earth. So I selected 4 images that I thought I could translate that in 3-dimensional. And so this one is Salt Lake, and all you see it on the right, were all fract lines of people with their cars. But it looks like a drawing, and it's so wonderful. And so the translation is the piece that you see on the left. You can see a better photograph probably in the exhibition because they're here. And this is not such a big photograph. This one was about nuclear sites, Crater, Nevada, and so this is how we have changed the surface of the earth. We have these holes in the earth, and this is where they make experimentation of nuclear things. So there you are. The pieces have 6 or 8 papers. They're all embossed. And there's a Fabriano 600 gram. And the page number of the book is sewn on the left side on the bottom beside the name of the work. And this is about the Czech Republic, how they do mining, what they do to the earth, how they change the surface of the earth. Now we jump to, what year it says? 10 to 19, I think so. So I made a trip to the desert of Atacama to see the ALMA. ALMA is Atacama Large Millimeter Array, where they is the largest telescope site, and it's there because 360 days of the year the sky is clear. And the altitude is 5,050 meters over 16,000 feet, more or less, when you walk in there. So first of all, they have a medical group that they make sure that your lips don't become purple, and you don't have a lack of oxygen when you walk there. And but to do this project, and when you see the video, you will understand why those sculptures that are at the museum, why they are what they are. And it was amazing to see these shadows on the satellites, because they would move and they would create different shadows. And the idea of this, well, I'm going to pass the video because then you would understand a little better. Let's see. This was done between my experience there and the Dominican Republic. the idea of this project was why the ALMAC was Israeli telescopes, and they was trying to portray the difference between looking at space and find life instead of looking at the Earth and see what's going on in our planet. There's a difference, and I find both interesting, but I think we should be looking what is happening here and what are our thoughts of everything that's happening here. Let me see. So these are silkscreen and relief printing on Fabriano paper. So now you can understand this work. This is called North and South Cole. It's done with the help of several teachers at MICA, and they did the form that I wanted. From one side, if you look at it, it's flat on the wall, and from the other side, if you look at it, is three-dimensional, and that's what I really wanted to create. And these two half moons are it's resin and a photograph and silkscreen of the North and the South Pole. All the paint was done by hand by me, and it was many hours of sanding with different types of sandpaper. We go here to the ninth planet. At that time, people were talking about a ninth planet, and this work belongs to Sue Payne, and it was not, there's not officially discovered there's a ninth planet, but there was a hypothetical planet 9 whose existence is suggested by the unusually clustering of small celestial bodies in the outer solar system. So that's why it's called the ninth planet, but we still don't have a ninth planet. And this were an antenna that I found in a junkyard, and I created three-dimensional pieces on it and photographed the shadows of them with different lights. And it was handmade paper by Helen Frederick. I gave her a mock-up, and she did the handmade paper for me. And then I silkscreened it and hand painted, and whole crafted was both painting too at the same time. Then I also did the sculpture that goes with those pieces. So here we're still in the desert of Atacama, and I am showing this photograph because that's how the afternoon start looking at the desert with their colors, but then it becomes really red. And so here it comes Atacama in red. This is a piece in the collection of Sue Payne, and of course I did an edition of 5, but I never could do the edition of 5 because I never could recreate the colors. Red is very hard to work with, and so I made only 2 pieces. They're like 5 pieces together, and then hand sewed and embroidered at the same time. Now we jump to 2019 to this exhibition called We the Migrants. And by 2050, 143 million people will migrate. 22.5 million or 24 million people are forced to move by weather events, flooding, forest fires, droughts, and storms, and sometimes also because of political reasons. So I did research at the library, the Enoch Pratt Library, where I wanted to. I started doing the research after 9/11 and to see what happened with the borders that were closed. I remember very well, I was at your house and I said, where should I go? What borders should I go? And check it out. And I had interviews with people when I went in El Paso and how these borders were so vibrant before 9/11, and when the US government closed these borders, these towns kind of died in some ways, and a lot of all these businesses, they're no existence anymore. So then people have to make a living, and that's how drugs and cartels and all this gun violence starts, when you don't see hope. In some ways, it's it's sad. But so at the library, I realized how impressive it was to find so much migration because of climate change. And so here it is. I recycled the library's newspaper, and I had this folded glass on the wall that would show what is happening in for Katrina, for instance. And the important part of this was the dates of the glass. So here, for instance, you see that people are migrating, and one is totally the projection of the folded glass that has the same size of the newspaper on the wall, and then the real news that is on the left side. And this, of course, the right side is the distortion on the news because the image is distorted. Okay? So we move. Here are more of the newspapers that I found at the library. And this is 2019, and some other ones are 2005, and some other ones I had all different types of. And here I jumped now from this project to the desert of Atacama again. And this is Atacama in gray. Is when I went to see the El Vertedero Europa, where they throw away all the clothes, and there were 70,000 tons they throw away, but maybe 39 every year they accumulate, and as 39 tons keep on going, and some they throw. So let me go to where I should go here. So it was at the dump in the desert. It really impressed me to see in a distance the shadow of this woman walking in these mountains, picking up whatever she could find, from sticks to clothes. And in the back, the sun was shining so strongly that the mountain had no color, became white, totally white, and it's gilded. So to get to this place, I have to cross a migrant camp of 70,000 people, and it was dangerous. And we went with guards to cross. So, but this was very impressive. I did the silk screen with somebody from MICA called Jacob Marrero. He helped me to create all the silk screens that you're going to see, some of them from the desert of Atacama. This is Camouflage. This is one of the pieces that's in the show, and it took me a year to do. I couldn't really see I wanted people to feel how horrible it was to see this mountain of clothes. So if you see the top of it is the mountain, and when I was doing all the chincole on it that are like 10 different prints, I felt like I could see bodies. They were wrapped in the clothes. And I had to put the piece away several times because it was asphyxiating me. But I wanted to create that sensation. I wanted to create there was no way out of there. Yeah, it's a difficult piece. This is some chincollage and three-dimensional paper in it, and hand painted. And here we come to the fast fashion Atacama, and I want to show the video. I went with a photographer that had a drone, and me, I had my camera, of course. So I asked him to put the drone like 1 meter above the clothes. But imagine, some of these clothes have never been used. This is with my camera. But at the same time that I saw all this, I also saw a lot of young people in different industries doing recycling, and I'll show a little bit of that afterwards. It's so impressive. And what they do is they burn it. Instead of giving it to people, they burn it, and you know that they burn plastic. It's really horrible. And then they put earth on top of it. Okay. So we're going to move to... Oh, no. I want to continue. What is happening here? Do we have time to see the another video? Yeah. Okay, there. So in Santiago, I went to a place also where they bring clothes. People bring their used clothes, and they take the zippers and the buttons, and they recycle it by colors many times, and many times they don't do it that way. But it was so interesting for me to see this and to realize that these young generations are having solutions for the excess plastic, because they also bring plastic from Peru and they shred it and they use it part of the clothes and of the yarns they do. All the bottles, the yellow bottles, the red bottles, the green bottles, all that is being recycled. And they use it for insulation, for cars. Some people are doing bricks and doing tables. They mix the shredded fabric with some natural glue. So there's a lot that people are doing. Oh my God. Thank God she's wearing a mask. So did we see this already? No? No. Koryta. So it's amazing that they can do that with all that shredded fabric. Then So from the aerial views, I created this piece that's called Fast Fashion Atacama 1, 2, 3, 4. And we had to put Michael had to put 4 images of the drone images together to create one piece. And I had 2 artists working from Micah with me. One was Jacob Marrero, and the other one was Rachel Sarnek. They were both working on these pieces, and they did a fabulous job because you see it very simple when it's mounted, but they had to stretch the fabric to a point that they didn't have to have it too tight when they embroidered or too loose. And so it took a lot of time, many, many hours to do all this. Oh my God. This one was, this represents, I wanted to represent the desert, the rainforest, and the ocean. And this represents the rainforest. And I got all this fabric and pineapple husk from a company in Spain called Piñatex. And I wanted the raw material so we could do something with this. And my assistant and friend, Jacob Marrero, did the construction of the vest. And he was pretty fabulous to work with. He was one of the best assistants I've had in many, many years. I really, he's a graduate from Micah. And so I get a lot of graduates from Micah in my studio to work because they want to work in the studio. They do internships because they want to learn about different materials. The desert piece was done with Helen Frederick, who is the master in handmade paper. And the red is clay found in construction sites. And also Jacob helped in this dress quite a bit. And this was the ocean piece that was done with bioplastic, crochet, and bio yarn, hand-painted bioplastic with turmeric, spirulina, and indigo paints. And this was done with Maya Malaga. There's 100 different recipes that you could do in your house with bioplastics. They call it bioplastic, but it's not plastic. It's gelatin, it's agar, it's salt, it's and it sets really fast. So you have to work really fast with this. And there's so many recipes. So some of them are you can do it so hard that you think that it'll cut you. You can do different thickness of the plaster. Well, not plaster, the gelatin. That's really. It also can melt. I mean, I didn't know it was going to melt on the way or not. Maya was wonderful to work with, and Jacob gave me that name to work with. She's also a graduate from Mellor College of Art. And this was one of the last pieces I did, was in handmade paper done at the studio of Helen Frederick. It has cotton pulp, and I did some with jeans pulp. And also the painted part are some painted in the paper, but you have to seal the paper first. And second, the other parts, the clusters, are painted in a very, very extremely thin paper. And that paper has a lot of sizing, a lot of different materials, so you can paint on it and it wouldn't fall apart. So it was one of my last pieces that I did, and very happy to go in that direction next. This is in the studio, my studio, and I have a printing studio. This is my printing studio. And those pieces that you see on the wall are the newspapers from after 9/11 on. I had a ton of messages and stuff. Oh, here we are with an artist that's here sitting in the here, Carolina Otero. And she's sitting here in the studio working with me and with other assistants from Micah, trying to develop a whole new project. And this is Olga Devane, a fabulous artist in Baltimore, and Joyce J. Scott, working in the studio. We are an experimental studio. We don't do editions. We try not to. If the artist wants to do it in an edition, I'm super happy that they do it, but I don't do them. And this is with Helen Fredericks. She was working for a show at the Phillips Collection in Washington, D.C. And that's it.
We have time for just a few questions. So is Tony still here? Can you help me with the mic, Tony? Can you help me with the mic? So if you have questions, please raise your hand. We'll bring a mic out to you. And while you're thinking of your questions, I'd like to pose one to start us off, which is it was so interesting to me, Soledad, how you named so many of your collaborators in this presentation. And I'm wondering why collaboration matters for your work. Why are you interested in collaboration?
Well, because I don't know everything. And some of these artists know so much more than I do. For instance, Jacob, I don't know anything about sewing. I actually don't like sewing, to be honest. But I love seeing something good. And Jacob was fabulous, excellent working in sewing, and he was excited about it and he liked it. So I've been collaborating since 1980s, earlier than the 80s, with astronomers and with different people. And I love working with different people. I really do. I learn and they learn different techniques, different ways of showing their work. And yeah, that's why. Because I don't know everything. You know, I work with landscape architects, I work with astronomers, I work with architects, I worked with so many different people. I mean, if Maya was a student at Micah, I didn't know anything about bioplastics until she got there and she said, look, so I've done all this research in bioplastic. And I said, I love to experiment with you. And that's what we did. Yeah. I'm going to say, yeah, if you don't mind.
Hello. So, from absorbing your slideshow, it seems like there's a lot of care and sensitivity to the earth. I was wondering if you could go into detail or not about your relationship to the earth now.
I don't understand.
Like,
Couldn't hear well. So a lot of your work deals with a relationship with Peter. Yeah, we talk more about that relationship, the what age would see.
Well, I think, you know, I work with projects pretty much. And when I travel on site, and I had a big influence when I lived in Venezuela, because I was always going to different places where there was jungle, there was ocean, there was rainforest, and I just loved it, and it kind of marked me in so many ways. And then after that, I liked working with nature. I went to Antarctica, and I was there for 5 days in Antarctica, and I did work about Antarctica. I can tell you one thing. I love the earth. I prefer green than white. I prefer mosquitoes than
penguins, to be honest. And I don't know. I'm, yeah. I just love dealing with different sites, and I loved going to the sites and develop some work. I think that's because I work in photography. I take photographs of where I go, and from those photographs, I develop a new project. And it usually happens in my printing studio, like Laura was saying. It's a way of discovering and meditating, and then going from there to sculpture, to painting, to different places. And that takes me to different mediums. And yeah, I hope I answered your question. Yeah, cool.
So I specifically really liked the work that you did with it was combining architecture and the plants. I think that was I don't remember the exact name of it. If you could go back to that one. I guess my main question with the intent of your work, are you mainly trying to embrace, reject, or question a lot of the phenomena occurring in modern society?
You say that last part again, trying to critique which society?
Are you trying to embrace, reject, or question a lot of the common occurrences in modern society?
Okay, but good now. So he's asking about idiocracy, embracing or expressing something contemporary society. What's your policy?
I think artists, we're all influenced what happened around us, and I think it's very important that we are aware of what happens around us. And many times I am critiquing. Many times I have done work like the Women's March, for instance, or Freddie Gray when he was killed in Baltimore. And I have become more political in certain ways, and I embrace nature. I love nature, but I also like to say what is happening with climate change, with floodings, with fires. And so we have to find a way to survive in this new environment. It's a lot of things that are bombarding us. So it's no way that I can say I do only one thing. I do all the three things that you said before. I embrace it, and I criticize it, and I oppose many things.
Yo. How do you pick and choose who you're collaborating with? And then, like, how do you pick and choose what mediums you're using to make the art forms?
How I choose my collaborators? Oh, okay. Actually, the medias, the collaborators, there's a website at MyCom, and people know me in the area quite a bit. So I sometimes I'm looking for an assistant, and they come, they call me back, and I place a note saying I'm looking somebody that knows printmaking, that knows how, or somebody that knows how to write, or somebody that knows how to do embroidery, and the artist responds to that. And now what was the second part of the the media. Well, actually, the project, when I go to a project, I have a project, and I never know how I'm going to develop that project. I really don't know. So I start thinking about it. I read, I research, and then sometimes the project shows me how to go about it. I don't have an answer. When I started with the dress, and I put the concept in my head that I wanted the fashion, because of the fast fashion, I wanted to represent the desert, the ocean, and the rainforest. I had no idea how that was going to go.
I didn't know anything. I was lucky to find somebody that could help me develop those ideas, and that was Jacob Marrero, who helped me develop all the fashion ideas. In the sense, he didn't help me to for the ideas. He helped me with the craftsmanship. He was very good, and then I found ways and found people to help me, like Helen Frederick, like Maya Malakoff, and Kieto. I think you just have to post what you want, and you're going to get it, I'm sure.
Hello. My question was, why'd you decide to use pineapple leaves for your dress?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I didn't know how I was going to represent the rainforest, and I hear my friend Sue Payne. I asked her, how do I go about it? And she says, well, I know these people that do with banana leaves, and they do an amazing job, and they do leather with banana leaves and all that. And then I start Googling in the internet what company could help me develop my idea. And I found this company called Piñatex that I had no idea of it, and it was wonderful. They had a very good website, and I got in touch with them to Spain and to their offices, and I told them what I wanted to do, and immediately they said yes. They were very interested, and they helped me, and I said I want the raw material of the pineapple plus the fabric of the pineapple. They also sent me some leather made from pineapple, what I really didn't want to use. I was not interested, but the raw materials were I wanted.
And also, I remember seeing your installation for these dresses in the Baffler Museum, and underneath it were like certain yarns, I believe. So could you please
In the exhibition?
in the exhibition?
Yeah, that's what's underneath. I don't like the base of those mannequins. I really don't. So I just put the yarns there. Those are the recycling yarns from that video that you saw, that I brought them from South America. But I really hated those legs, so I covered them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, so I know you mentioned something about like a lot or some of your pieces were like commissioned by XYZ. Um, did you feel any pressure when they contacted you about commissioning, and how did you go about like the process of like what were you going to design, how were you going to express it, and things like that?
I'm sorry, I hear how, but please, sorry. How do commissions work? Then some commissions only need pressure. How do you have a commission and
I feel pressured, always. I mean, it would be alive, I tell you I don't. And I was pressured by my own ideas too, because I didn't know how to develop them. And well, that's when research comes along, and when you just have to sit and see how are you going to go about it. And for instance, the dresses, I didn't know how to do them and what I was going to do with that. I looked at fashion designers that did work with paper, for instance. So at first, my first idea was that I was going to do everything with paper. And then I realized, no, paper is not going to work for what I want. So I did only one with paper. But um, yeah, it's just research. You just need to take time. Imagine this show took me 3 years to research, between going down to South America, coming back, think about what I want to do, it just takes a long time, and people don't understand. They see 3 pieces or 4 pieces, and oh my God, I could do that in a year. No, you can't. I mean, it's not that easy. And every show takes at least 3 to 4 years to be planned and to be done correctly. Yeah. And I'm always grateful for all the people who helped me. Always. Yes. Oh, I actually, this time, I don't want to work with anybody. For the first time in a long time, I want to have like a private space in my studio, and I want to do the work myself. Well, I always do the work myself, but I always have helping artists, and this time I just think I need to go inwards instead of out, because this project was very intense and I had a lot of collaborators in different fields, and I'm going to work with the last piece that you saw that's called algae clusters, and I'm going to continue in that direction for a while. Then I don't know what else I'm going to do. I've been reading a lot of different things that interest me and things that are happening in different parts of the world, and I hope to find something that motivates me enough to pursue it. Yep. Thank you, Soledad.